The museum's now been going for 47 years. It started as a recovery group, recovering crashed aircraft that were shot down during the Battle of Britain. Then you suddenly realise there is an onus on you to actually preserve the history, but we are here to commemorate as many of the Battle of Britain pilots and aircrew as possible of all sides. We don't show any political bias. We're here to tell the story of young men that fought. There's a dwindling population of Battle of Britain pilots. We're down to about 40 surviving Allied pilots. So as each one dies, our job becomes that much more important to make sure they're commemorated alongside their friends. So we've excavated remains of over 700 Battle of Britain aircraft shot down within the 20 weeks of the Battle of Britain. But each display shows items recovered from the aircraft, but more importantly, it shows photographs of the pilot, the aircrew, those who participated in shooting it down, but also the personal story of these individuals. So it has a wide appeal to anybody. It's not just the archetypal war museum of blank faces and stories. It is a real human side of fighting, and the Battle of Britain was the most important conflict of the Second World War because it allowed everything else to follow afterwards. If we'd lost the Battle of Britain, Britain would have either been invaded or would have sued for peace. The Second World War would have been over. Our lives would be different. We owe so much to the 2,938 men that flew and fought in the Battle of Britain.
Now, Hawkinge as a site was quite important for the Battle of Britain. Now we see a housing estate, but previously it was an airfield. Tell us a little bit about the site itself and what happened here during the Battle of Britain.
It was the frontline fighter station during that period of time. It was so dangerous being here because of the cross-channel shelling and being bombed daily that through the height of the Battle of Britain, squadrons would be evacuated back inland to the famous Biggin Hill, Kenley, Hornchurch, North Weald. But first light, they would fly down, fight and patrol out of here during the day, and at sort of 10, 11 o'clock at night would pull back inland. The airfield would then basically be evacuated because it was just such a target and so close, so cross-channel shelled for throughout the war.
Walking around the museum, one gets a very strong feeling of the amount of young men that lost their lives in the Battle of Britain, many who came down in the area around Folkestone. Talk us through some of the stories of the pilots and the aircraft and you excavating them.
To start with, there's 2,938 Allied Battle of Britain pilots, of which 1 in 6 would be killed during the Battle of Britain. Many more would be critically wounded. We've excavated over 700 aircraft. Each tells its own personal story. For instance, there's every time you pick a book up on the Spitfire, the Battle of Britain, there's pictures of 610 Squadron taken flying out of Hawkinge. One aircraft in particular is coded DW for 610, it's personal code O. That was shot down over Hawkinge on the 26th of August 1940, and a pilot, Frank Kinsley Webster, was killed when it crashed at Fleegless Court Farm out on Calgate Lane at Hawkinge, very close to the museum. We excavated the remains of that back in the 1990s. When we traced the family and told them we'd excavated the remains, they were very interested and came to visit the museum. We also learnt that his mother and father always wanted to know where he was killed so they could lay flowers and were never able to. So the following year we organised for the cousin, the only living relation that knew Frank, and the nephew and niece and their respective families to come down and laid flowers at the crash site. Each year now, on the 26th of August, museum representatives lay flowers at the crash site on behalf of his family in a symbolic act of remembrance. Items from his aircraft can be seen in the museum, the famous photographs can be seen, but it's just a small snapshot of one person's life. When you come around the museum, you'll pick and choose what you read, but when you do, you'll begin to feel as though you know these individuals. They become alive. We give them a taste of immortality.
Tell us about the work that you've been doing on the museum recently.
Well, each winter we close in November and open again around about Easter. This year we've opened 2 weeks early, but we're always improving and expanding the museum. This winter we've rebuilt the Fee 1 building completely. Inside is a brand new display, a bigger, better display on the Fee 1 and Fee 2 attacks on Great Britain. We've spent the winter doing a lot of maintenance on the 3 Gate Guardian Hurricanes that stand in the grounds at the museum, and they've got a fresh coat of paint on. We don't like the idea when a lot of people go to museums, they go back and see the same dusty exhibits and cobwebs. We're constantly trying to improve. We treat it as our front room. It's very personal to us, but we just want to make sure each year it grows. We try and add new displays on a weekly basis. It's increasingly difficult to find those exhibits, but we're constantly looking and striving to improve. If we can't improve with new exhibits, we try and improve with more photographs, more information, more details.
These Gate Guardian Hurricanes that you mentioned, basically life-size replica of Hurricane aircraft that fought in the Battle of Britain. Tell me a bit about those and where they came from.
The idea of Gate Guardian aircraft came about when the RAF realised that they were sitting on an asset with original Hurricanes and Spitfires and other aircraft on RAF bases. A certain amount of those were released when the RAF bases closed, but a lot was sold off and then replaced with fiberglass cast of the original aircraft. So although they are replica, they do show every fold of fabric, every rivet. So the replicas adequately are there as a memorial, as an education facility. People can see what a Hurricane, a Spitfire, a Messerschmitt looks like when they visit the museum, and they just stand in silent sort of tribute to the men that fought and died from Hawkinge and from all airfields in the Battle of Britain.
This museum is essentially run by yourself and a team of very dedicated volunteers. Does this mean that what we see here today in the museum, it's how it's going to be like, 20, 50 years in the future? Or have you got plans to expand it even further?
We're constantly expanding and improving. We're attempting and trying to acquire additional lands to guarantee the future of the museum. Anybody visiting the museum will see how cram-packed we are and how little space we have.
And it's not just the Battle of Britain that you have exhibits for here. Now, in the First World War, there's a fairly famous attack on Tontine Street, killing quite a lot of people. And you're also planning an exhibit related to that, aren't you?
Yes, we have a large collection of First World War artefacts. My colleague, who sadly died last year, the founder and curator of the museum, Mike Llewellyn, one of the last exhibits he bought and donated to the museum was a Gotha bomber. There isn't an original Gotha bomber that survives anywhere in the world, and this one was built for the Flyboys film. And it's our ambition to potentially put up a new building or extend an existing building, but by 2017, the 100th anniversary of the Tontine Street raid, we want to have that on show so people will see a diorama scene of that raid, but you'll view the Gotha with the crew, with one of them actually holding a bomb over a scene painted on the floor of Folkestone, and then around that will be the photographs of those civilians that lost their lives as a lasting memorial, and we think a very symbolic memorial to the First World War.
To help tell this story, it's essentially you and a small team of volunteers that do the work here. For people who are interested in helping out here, is there space? Are you looking for volunteers, and how do people get involved?
Absolutely, we're always looking for help. We're lucky at the moment, we're running with about 25 volunteers. For many years we ran with about 8. Over the last couple of years, say it's gone up to about 25, but we always need help. There's always jobs that need doing. We're looking for skilled labour, but unskilled labour as well. So if people are interested, please come along, ask for myself, Dave Brocklehurst, or one of my colleagues, have a chat and see if it's something that you'd be interested in doing. We're open 6 days a week, Tuesdays to Sundays. We're only open on the bank holiday Mondays. In the summer months, most of it is actually talking to the customers, keeping an eye on the buildings, groundwork, bits and pieces. In the winter month, it's more display work, maintenance work, but it's an interesting and different hobby.